Hey, I'm your host, Bree Wild, and this is Marquee Memories. Here we sit down with your favorite artists to talk about their top concert memories as fans. Today's guests are a rock band from St. Louis who exploded on the scene with the anthemic Until the Day I Die in 2003. As promised, they're still spilling their hearts for us to this day, most recently with the release of Arson, their 8th studio album. Story of the Year is here.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi. That's us.
Hi. So the day after your album was released, you played a show at the pageant. And I usually don't bring setlist stats into that because that's a different show. But you played the pageant a lot, 22 times it says. Is that a special venue for you?
Whoa.
Yeah. It's our hometown venue, and we always try to do a hometown release every time we put out a new record, and because it's just a special vibe and an awesome crowd usually, and that's the great way to kick off a new project for us. But yeah, I didn't know 22 times. That's crazy.
That makes sense.
Sounds right though.
Yeah, once a year.
Yeah.
And dude, honestly, we're very lucky in St. Louis. It's one of the best venues of that size in the country. So fans in St. Louis should know that.
Yes.
Feel lucky.
Last year, you pulled a song from 2008 back into the set list. We're Not Gonna Make It. What was the decision behind that, especially since you had some new songs?
Yeah, that's always been one of our favorite songs off of our third record, The Black Swan, but we did not play it for a really long time just because, the more records you put out, the harder it is to fit newer songs in the set list. So when we put The Black Swan out, there was a couple singles that we had to play and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it was always a favorite of ours, and it's been a staple now for the last year or two, every show. And yeah, it's still an awesome, lyrically especially, it's just one of our favorites. It's cool to be able to pull songs in and out over the years, and keeps it fun for us too. Right, guys?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I feel like for a lot of years we kind of just did different versions of the same set list. So in addition to new songs, we were like, you know what? We have some classic bangers that although they weren't singles, they're still really mean a lot to us, and they're fun to play. So that would be in that group.
Do you think every song from Arson is eventually going to get its live debut?
I would love that, personally.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah,
realistically.
I mean, we'll go
You're
through
8 albums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of songs on Tear Me to Pieces, our last record, that still at least half the record that's never gotten played yet.
So that one first.
Yeah, it's it's just, at least half of them will make their way in the set at some point. But there's always, later when you're writing records, you can get away with being like, we'll probably never play this live, so let's just make a cool, crazy, weird part that maybe we'll never pull off live. You can get away with that a little more as you have more and more records, but then that ends up being the single, and you're like, shit, now we have to play it.
Also, when you have a first record like ours that really, like, we're here talking to you because of our first record, and our diehards, they kind of grew up with that record, so you kind of want to give those people what they want, and that means we typically have to play a whole lot of that album, so it doesn't leave a whole lot of space in the set list for, 6 other albums, so that's a thing too.
We would gladly play the whole record front to back right now.
This record would be the most likely to have all the songs other than Page Avenue be played.
And I think we've already played more songs from this one than we did Tear Me to Pieces. Yeah. Because Tear Me to Pieces also was running concurrently with the anniversary of Page Avenue, so we had to play a lot of Page Avenue. There wasn't as much space, so it was really just singles. But this one, that release show, I think we did 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, as long as it does well enough, we will play the whole record front to back.
Hey, thanks for the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it. All right, let's get into some of these memories, okay?
Deftones at the Galaxy in St. Louis in 1997.
Who was that?
Maybe
That was-
96?
All 3 of
96.
us.
96.
Yeah,
It was one of
96
those
or
years.
97, yeah.
Okay.
Because it was before Limp Bizkit really blew up. It was their first album, and they were opening for Deftones.
So this is a small venue in St. Louis that we kind of cut our, we played this venue
500 people.
as a local band. It's a small venue,
What's it called?
It's called the Galaxy.
It's gone now.
It's gone, but that was like our club growing up as a local band in St. Louis. But what makes this show special is that we went down in the afternoon at like 3:00 in the afternoon and just walked in the venue and just kind of like acted like we were supposed to be there. We didn't have any money. We're just stupid kids. And keep in mind the Deftones, like, collectively one of our favorite bands. It's personally my favorite band of all time. It's Josh's favorite band of all time. So we're these teenage kids walking into like our idols, like our musical idols, and having like the audacity to just walk in and we wound up talking to them, and we were talking to Abe's, Steph, Chino, some of the guys were like, we watched them sound check, and wound up talking to Abe, and we were just like, we're a band from St. Louis. We don't have any money. And he wound up and was like, oh, you guys don't have tickets? Like, oh, I got you. Put us on the guest list. So we got to watch our favorite band in our hometown on their guest list, just by being idiots,
And then the show, like in general, Dan and I were actually talking about it on the way here or driving earlier, was like just one of the hardest hitting shows in that venue that any of us had ever seen. And like Josh said, it was 500 capacity, but they would sell like 850 in that place. And it would just be like
sweaty.
The walls would be dripping, And it was one of those high energy nights. And we remember Limp Bizkit just like destroying. I don't even know who the opener was. They came out and it was like life changing. And then Deftones came out and they ripped, but they had kind of a weird off night where Chino, like, I think he was a little drunk, and he at one point he yanked the microphone cable and pulled down like part of Abe's drum kit.
Yeah.
And they had almost like this like fight on stage, but then I think
they made up like 2 songs later on stage.
Like, hey man, I'm sorry, bro. Like,
Yeah. But it's so cool because, like, again, it's hard for me to articulate just how much I love this band. And back then they were so influential to us. And they didn't have to keep their word. Like, he's like, yeah, I'll put you on the guest list. Like, he could have just been like, who are these kids that just walk into our sound check and with no tickets, But the dude kept his word, And we go up to Will Call and we're like, we're on the band's list. And like, in my brain, it's like, we're probably not, And he's just like, oh yeah, there you are. You're good.
Even to this day, if like a really good friend of ours comes through and I'm like, yeah, we got you. They're like, we got you on the list. There's still always that panic of like, I'm on the list.
Oh, for sure.
And you're like, hopefully.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
I've showed up to shows recently where I'm not on the list. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. I'm like texting the singer and they're going on. And I'm like, well, guess not going in.
Deftones have always been really down to earth in that way, in a lot of ways. Like, we've crossed paths with them a bunch over the years. We got to tour with them in, I guess, 2008.
6.
Was it 6?
Yep.
Taste Chaos, 2006,
okay. Yeah, so we've gotten to know them. We've like kind of told them some of those stories from years before, and there's another one that I will not say on this recording that is like a next level version of that, like sneaking in a venue situation.
He kidnapped Chino.
But I told Steph, and this was before we were even signed. We were still young. It was still like just a few years after. And he's like, gotta do what you gotta do, bro. Like, he was just like, respect for just like going for it.
They don't care.
No. And
like if somebody did that at one of our shows, we'd just be like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah. But also, it's cool because, like, doing what we do, like, on any given night, you can really give someone an experience that they'll remember forever. Like, I'll never forget that show. Like, I'll never forget my first show. So it's like, it's something I think about while we're on tour. It's like, even if I'm not having like the best day or like I miss my kids or whatever, it's just like, you know what, like, regardless, I'm going to like go out there and like give it my all, because you never know. It's like somebody out there, like, or if you meet somebody at a VIP, or if you're just like on tour and, you meet somebody that's going to the show that night and stuff. It's like, I don't know. I don't take that lightly. It's like you could like really make a memory this person will have for the rest of their life.
It might be our 20th show on, in that month, but it might be the one and only show for that person, maybe in their whole life.
Yeah.
We did have a few other bands on the show, and one of them mentioned that sneaking into a show, just slyly, like asking the caterers, like, can we go in that door? Like, was their like highlight of their show. They were at like an industry special show, that they weren't supposed to be at. And
just a little bit of extra, like just something. You're like, that was so cool. Yeah.
That like made their day. But were you guys already a band at that point?
We were in different bands.
Me and Ryan were in I was probably still playing guitar. Was that like 67 North days? I don't even know if Big Blue Monkey. Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah.
We might have just started Big Blue Monkey, but me and Ryan have been playing together since the mid 90s in some form or another. I switched instruments a few times. I was a guitar player at first, and then I went to drums, and then I was always a singer and guitar player, but we were just trying to find a lineup of people.
The four of us have been playing together mid-90s, high school. Like, I played in a band with him. I played in his band for like 8 months, a year, or whatever. And then,
we all swapped
we
members with each other until we
all
figured
lived
it out.
within like a mile of each other. Like, just
when did it like congeal? Like, oh yes, we are this configuration. Like
2001.
Yeah, probably 2001.
2000 or 2001, we actually went back to singing, and then Josh officially joined up with us. And then we started kind of moving forward as this new version of our band. And it was the four of us who originally started this, which is crazy to be like 25 or 26 years in with the same four guys. We had other guitar players as well, fifth members, but this was the original four. It's crazy.
And we still like each other. It's weird.
do you go to like band therapy or something? How do you?
It's just called tour.
It's this. It's right now.
Yeah.
You're our therapist.
Sitting down. Okay, I'm going to do the thing where I wait for you to speak.
Yeah. So you go.
Oh,
We aired out publicly.
So how much is our copay for this session?
$20.
No, that's our time.
45 minutes is up. Was it the first time you'd seen the Deftones?
No,
That was the first time I'd seen him.
because they were
No.
on Warped before
Yeah.
you guys saw
Yeah,
them.
Warp 96
96
was the first time we saw him. And it
Yeah.
was one of those things where it was like, you know, when you're young and you have your little group of friends that like a band, you think you're the only people that
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this band.
yeah.
So we're like,
There's no social media. There's none of
Yeah.
that.
So
we
we're
thought
like-
we thought it was like me, you,
Yeah.
Kavar. It was like there's like 9 people that know about
yeah,
this
and
band.
that we're
you
just
know?
like, okay, cool, we're waiting for them to come on, we're waiting for them to come on. And then everyone filled into the amphitheater and we were like,
It's like an amphitheater, and just they just start, and there's like this mob of people.
we're like, how do you guys know who this band is?
It's like, this is stupid, man. This is
But
our
even
band.
at that moment, though, they were still like despite the fact that they were on a major label, like I couldn't find Deftones merch anywhere but at the show. You know, I was looking
Yeah.
in the back of like Rockabilia magazine and
yeah.
stuff at the time. Nothing. There's no, there were like no internet web shops for merch and stuff at the time.
So how did you discover Deftones then?
Probably back then, like samplers.
Samplers for sure.
Like,
Like
little 2 songs
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
samplers.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that would Concrete Corner. Remember that?
Yeah.
What
for
was
sure.
the one where you called like the 800 number, and you could just like hear like snippets?
Oh,
You know what I'm talking
I,
about?
I always remember calling
Yeah.
that and listening to
To Paw, Dragline.
yeah,
Yeah.
Dragline. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were things in that like Concrete Corner Street Team era where they would do like the first time I heard Korn was by sending a postcard to get a CD sampler, a single sent to my house.
Yeah, I had a
and
tape, a Corn tape. that
yeah,
had Blind and Clown on it. I
yeah,
think.
there was a lot of stuff like that. So it had to be Street Side Records. There was one by my high school. There was there kind of a few in St. Louis. That was our like hometown record store chain. And you would always, up at the checkout, find samplers
Yeah,
or,
but even
or
like
things like
with,
that.
like with Deftones, like being on tour with them, it didn't matter. Like our guitar tech or one of our bass tech was double dipping and working for them too, and he would save 2 seats on the side of the stage, and like we had camping chairs, and we had like a cooler, and me and Ryan would just go sit there every night. It didn't
Can you
matter.
tell we love the Deftones?
Yeah.
On tour with them, but still just like
And then like we would skateboard with them after the show. We'd be like, we had the Thrice dudes, As Lay Dying dudes, and Chino would come out, and we would like skateboard. And I remember one time I ollied over a trash can and Chino saw me. I mean, this is like my musical guy.
yeah.
He saw me, and the next day we were walking to catering, and he's just like, gave me 5 because he thought it was super fucking tight that I could ollie a trash can. It was
And
like,
then the last show we played on that tour, we got them. We requested that they played.
yeah. He's like, what y'all want to hear? It's
Teething
like,
and
this
Teething,
random B side, and they fucking played it.
Yeah,
you know.
cool.
I saw Abe earlier in the day walking with like a practice pad and sticks back to the bus. I go, what are you doing? He goes, I got to go learn these songs.
Oh, I wonder why.
Yeah.
hey, dude, last thing on Deftones for
No,
me.
this whole interview is
It might
Deftones.
not-
Let's go.
It might
Keep
not be
going.
the last thing.
Keep going.
This is like, this may be like my peak memory as a musician in terms of like feeling like we have the respect of people who we look up to. We played, it was our hometown show on the Taste of Chaos tour with them. And we had this big after party in the dressing room, and they all kind of came through a little bit. Chino was there for 9 seconds, got mobbed, had to leave.
Yeah.
But Chi,
Deftones came to our party, just so you know.
so Chi was still alive at the time, and we were both good and drunk, and we were just kind of talking off to the side, having this conversation about, I don't know what specifically. And I think I was telling him probably that, how much we look up to them, whatever. And he turns it around and goes, man, no, I got to tell you, I watch you guys up there just fucking killing it. Story of the year inspires me. Yeah. And I was like,
Yeah, I mean, dude,
What did you just
he
say?
He would randomly so we did Taste of Chaos with him. And like every couple nights, I'd just be playing, I'd kind of turn around and like she would just be back there just like watching us moving his head and shit. And it's like, that's what? Like, and then you just like try to rock harder,
You-
you know?
Not Taste of Cass, but Steph watched us on Lincoln Park when we were on that tour.
Oh, yeah,
that's
he
right,
was
yeah.
out.
Yeah. It was weird. I'd look over and I was like, Steph.
So nervous. I'm so nervous.
Yeah.
Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
I remember playing some festival and Dennis, the singer, refused. We were like, we used to do this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where we like jump. I remember there was like a monitor behind like a big speaker behind the drums, and I was standing on it. And I jumped over Josh's drum set. I jumped over you, and I landed and I like fractured my heels, and I couldn't walk for like a month. But that show, like that part where we were all in the cabs and stuff, like I just kind of looked over, and the only reason I jumped off is because Dennis was watching us, and he just had this huge smile because he was like, we were just on like we were just kind of breaking through, you know. We were just known as this crazy live band, and the Refused is like meant so much to all of us, you know. And he was just like so happy watching us just be fucking idiots and jump around and shit. And I was like, dude, I'm jumping over this whole drum set because Dennis is watching us, you know.
So you hadn't
International noise
rehearsed
conspiracy?
that move before.
Yeah,
You
that's-
just
yeah.
did it.
We did all kinds of crazy
we
stuff
jump
every
off
night.
everything, but that was a big one. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll just segue into Refuse since we're already there.
Ryan's a great host.
Right?
He knows where he's going.
Thanks, guys. So that was at the Montebello Rock Fest in Montreal.
Refused at Montebello Rock Fest, Montreal in 2015.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, we've been influenced by Refused heavily, especially guitar-wise and just like the simplicity of their brand of punk rock and hardcore and the way they do it. But none of us had ever seen them like in the early days, I don't think. And we played a festival with
They
them.
probably like broken up.
Yeah.
They broke up for a while.
Yeah, it was like
it
Shape
was
of
one
Punk
those
to
ones
Come
that you-
was like 99 and then they went away.
Yeah, you like find a band after they broke up and you
Yeah.
go, well, come on, man.
And then we ended up being on a big festival in Canada called Montebello Rock Fest or something like that. And we weren't sure about the year. It was like 2018-ish, it was somewhere in those years. And they had gotten back together and we were all excited. And we're like, we're on a show with Refused. This is sick. So yes, then we all went up stood on stage and got to watch them.
Yeah, it was cool because like if you listen to specifically New Noise, and there's like just everything about like the approach to the guitar. If you listen to that one song and you listen to like go to our first record, listen to Hero Will Drown, like In the Shadows, and like there's other records and other things, but like that's directly that. Like that's that, like coming through, you know? And so you see this band that like really had a huge impact on us, not just me as a guitar player, but our whole band. Just fucking shred, dude. Like it was unbelievable. They sounded perfect. Like it was insane, you know? And so it was a really cool moment.
Were you guys more excited to play the festival or more excited to see them at the festival?
I'm more excited to see them.
Yeah.
It was a really cool festival all around, but I don't remember our show, but I do remember their show.
Yeah.
I remember our show. It was late at night.
Oh, it was that side stage.
Yeah, we were like
one.
11:45 p.m.
Yeah. That was actually a great show now that I remember that. Yeah, it was really good.
I remember. Yeah.
That was cool. We were like, is anybody still going to be there?
Yeah.
And then it ended up being really great.
At least they didn't put you on at the same time. How criminal would that
Yeah,
have
that
been?
happens
That
a lot.
That happens a lot.
Like when we were young or stuff that we've been doing in the last few years, there's so many bands that you're going to play at the same time as somebody. But no, that day Refused played on the main stage earlier in the day, so we had nothing going on. It was perfect timing. And we all just stood there like little kids. We were probably almost in our 40s at that point, and we're just like little teenagers on the side of the stage.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was very cool.
So good.
How did you discover Refused?
Dude, I don't know.
These guys showed them
I knew
to
him
me.
because
So.
it was like the thing we were talking about how do you discover anything back then. My way, like Deftones and Korn and stuff was like major label bands, so it was a little different. But Refused was on Epitaph, so like Epitaph and Fat Records and those kind of things. All those bands, I would just look at the back and see the inserts and see who they thanked and like what bands were friends or just what label bands were on. So it was just like I loved NoFX and Bad Religion and Rancid and everybody who was on Epitaph. So I would listen to anything that came out on Epitaph at that point, which later we put 2 records out on Epitaph, which was great. But so I think they had a whole Swedish side of their label, and Refused was like one of the biggest. It was Millencolin and Refused and Satanic Surfers and all these bands that I love as well. But they were like the Swedish band, you know. It was a time where all the Swedish punk bands were just kicking ass, and I just found it somehow through that, and I loved it. I don't know if I showed you guys or not. I don't remember. But
I think for me, now that I think about it, I think it was the music video for New Noise. and just being like captivated. Like this is like how is a band this cool? Like
They're playing it on Fuse and MTV2 and
yeah,
stuff.
I was like, how is it even possible that a band is this fucking cool? You know?
Yeah, the video
And then
was
you
awesome.
go and you see they're down to their design with like the like everything like Helvetica. Like I feel like they were like Swiss Modern, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, dude. It was just the aesthetic was just so everything about it was just like, why are they so cool? You know?
And that album title is so audacious, so confident. To
It's called
call
The
your
Shape
album
of Punk to Come.
Yeah, The Shape of Punk to Come. Like the fucking audacity to call your shit that and be right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. I had the record before that, Songs to Fan the Flames of Discontent, and it's not nearly as good of a record, but it's cool. It's like classic hardcore, you know? It's like, it was on Victory, and it was a little different, but when they put that out, they're like, watch how fucking good we are.
Yeah.
And then
that was
they'd break up. Like, what the hell?
Did you ever cross paths with them at any other time, or probably?
Not really. International Noise Conspiracy, which was Dennis's other band.
He's that show
that
you
when
were
they-
talking about.
yeah.
That was when they were.
They were on Warped Tour and stuff when we were on Warped Tour, but no, I think we're like, it's like scary to meet people that you don't necessarily know if they're going to be cool. So it's kind of keep your distance unless it naturally happens.
Not everybody's going to be as cool as Deftones.
Yeah,
true.
but usually, I mean, I think we have probably met a couple of them at some point. 90% of the time, it's a great interaction, but it's always like standoffish. You don't want to be like, I don't want to ruin this just in case this guy sucks.
Yeah.
What about them as performers do you like pull into your show for inspiration?
It's just the energy for sure. They were all about the energetic live show.
But not just energy, like unhinged energy. You know?
And it's not energy as a collective. It's a collective, but it's each individual. Like the drummer, like dude just sitting down using sticks, but like every hit just has this snap and this energy to it, and just like
it's just funny. It's like it's interesting watching a drummer like that in a band like that, knowing he's like a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
But he's like playing this like super hard stuff on like a minimal kit.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, if you break it down, besides the drums are pretty complex. But if you break it down just as like a music nerd, like a lot of it is it's just simple. It's just simple bonehead shit, but it's played with such like fury and intention.
I'm telling them you said that.
And then when you put it all together, it's like
Calling my
it's
friend
like
Dennis.
fucking magic, you know? Yeah.
It's probably
yeah,
like the
definitely.
same type of appeal that metalcore has to fans, like, you know, of a younger generation, where like it comes all the way back around to like as a horseshoe to meet pop genre wise, where it's just like chunking on one note. It all just becomes rhythm at some point. So it's something that moves your head, and there's something about just like the three notes that Refused would use in the handful of songs that really influenced our sound. They might as well be the same note in a way, because it's so much about the rhythm.
Well, it is. If you think about, like, we're talking about New Noise so much, it's like, it's kind of like 11 versions of the same riff.
Right.
Like, besides the bridge, the whole song is just one riff, but it's how many different ways can we,
Exactly.
you know? And
Yeah.
it's just like, there's so much power in that, you know?
Is that the Refuse song they used in The Bear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very recognizable. Okay. Anything else about Refused? Otherwise,
I think we covered it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really cool.
They're really cool.
Yep, they broke up again, so maybe we'll
Right,
get another
good.
reunion. I don't know. They are very indecisive about if they want to be a band or not.
You guys broke up for a tiny period, right?
We didn't
We
break
never-
up.
You just
Stopped.
We did
Side
not
hustles?
purposely do anything.
Side
we
hustles.
just
Yeah.
got busy with life, and it kind of the band took a back seat for a while for a bunch of us, for most of us, and then it worked itself back. It wasn't on purpose, but yeah.
but
Sometimes
there's
you
never
gotta-
any like we're done.
No.
Yeah.
We're not smart enough business people to break up on purpose.
That's,
Yeah. We always
that's the best answer.
Yeah.
That's our answer from here on
we
out.
always say we should have. That way,
yeah.
if we got back together, it would have been a bigger deal. But it's like, no, we're still a band. We just don't really do a whole lot.
Yeah.
Let's go to Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney, 1993, Paul is Live New World Tour. My first show ever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My mom, like every time fans come through and bring their kid and they're like, it's their first show, I'm like, I got you beat, bro. So yeah, it's
No, we could give Paul a run for his money,
yeah.
dude.
Dude, what's funny, I was just thinking about this as this interview was going. From the beginning of the Beatles until that moment in 93, we're not far from that stretch of time from the beginning of when we started to, you know, whatever. It like, it's a wild thing. I always think about this, like how far into our career we are compared to others that I grew up on. But yeah, a stadium show is kind of a wild first show to have. It's the Old Bush Stadium, which, you know, was a big famous historical stadium.
Where the
Did you
St.
get-
Louis
did you get,
Cardinals
like, a hot
play.
dog and stuff.
I may have gotten a hot dog, yeah. But I mean, they were nosebleed seats. We had the little mini binoculars and stuff, but it was such
You
a
had that
massive
cool delay.
Yeah, it was like such a massive scale. I mean, fireworks at the end, the whole 9 yards. And I had seen concert videos. I had seen live bands in like bars, I guess, but like seeing like an entire stadium, 40, 50,000 people, all singing the words to songs that I knew they were internalized by being around them, but like, I don't know. I guess I just didn't really truly understand the scale until that moment, and seeing like lighters everywhere for Hey Jude going on for 9 minutes, that kind of stuff was.
So you just do like Beatles stuff, or did he have solo
I did
stuff
Beatles
going
and
on there?
Wings.
Beatles solo and Wings, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really. I'm not
But
up on
You
my.
don't celebrate Paul's catalog?
I don't celebrate his entire catalog, but
Just watching people just bawl crying during certain shows, it completely opened my mind to what was possible as a band or a musician or an artist. And I hope to see him again if he tours again before he leaves the earth. But we'll see.
Paul will never leave the earth.
He'll live to be 190.
Hoping he's an immortal, like a vampire or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
secretly. You know?
He looks great for his age.
Looks incredible.
how old is he? Like 80 something?
He's
85?
approaching 90. Like he's in
Holy
his
shit,
mid
He's
80s, I
80,
think.
yeah.
So did you want to go to the show, or was this like your mom's taking like what?
Both, but it was the kind of thing where like she indoctrinated me so heavily with all of the stuff she grew up on, from like true oldies and Motown through to the Beatles and, classic rock of like the mid-late 70s, like the early seeds of metal, Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, bands like that. So Paul McCartney being the first big one who came through when I was kind of an age to start going to shows. I don't remember the conversation, but when she brought it up, I said, yeah, of course, I want to go to that. So
Yeah, I guess.
How old are you?
46. So
No, how old are you?
Wow.
you said how old?
Damn, how old are you now? Are you 80?
Yeah, Paul and I were peers.
Sorry, how old were you then?
I was 13.
13. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, that's
I think I was like,
that was entertaining.
That math checks out.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I think I was like 8 in my first show.
Really?
Saw the Monkees.
Dude,
that's
this is
rad,
this
dude.
whole idea of like our generation, like liking the same music as your parents and going to a show with your parents is so foreign to me.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if my mom or dad liked something, there's no fucking way I could ever like it. Like I light shit on fire and ride a skateboard. I'm no way I'm not listening to mom music. No fucking way.
Your parents are older than my parents, though. So
My dad could beat up your dad.
but no, they're both dead.
That's my joke.
That is true.
But I like the span of time between yours is maybe more. Like, what did your parents listen to?
I don't want to say. No.
Nirvana.
I don't know. Like my dad listened to like Hank Williams and Elvis and shit. So like to
Yeah.
this, like I wasn't that kid, dude. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I
I
just
think we're the only two in the band that had parents that listened to like what we would,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
it's just a different like I think it's just different like now because there's probably a multitude of reasons that I can't really wrap my head around, but like my kids love the same music I do. Like my daughter and I have her favorite band is also the Deftones. My son fucking loves Pantera. Like it's crazy, But like I feel like our generation, I don't know, at least maybe it's just me, I don't
My
know.
kid's like Big X the Pun.
I mean, I guess like
Music is a lot more accessible now, so it's
Yeah.
easier to
Right.
get into everything
Well, I think it's just-
than it was at our age.
Now sit, we're going to put this record on.
Yeah.
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 Well, I mean, my dad played guitar and in bands, so it's like I had to grow up in a musical household. So it was like,
Yeah.
it was just always
Yeah,
there.
no one played music in my house.
Yeah.
So your parents made music cool.
yeah,
And you
my-
were like, I'm not doing what they're doing.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
My parents are a little younger, so they liked like Meatloaf and Pat Benatar and stuff. And I
Yeah,
was like, that stuff's cool. It's fine.
Dan's mom like would drop him off at band practice in a like
In a
drove like
Camaro.
in a Camaro. She was like young.
Yeah,
she had you when
she
she was
was
like
young,
11 or
dude.
something. His parents are young.
She sells merch for us.
Merch girl.
Kidding.
Whose house was the band practice house?
My mom's house.
Yeah, that was Ryan's
Yeah.
house always.
Yep.
That was the basement at Ryan's mom's house.
Poor lady. We
We
destroyed
owe
the
his
house.
mom back money for food we ate.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to just Oh, I shouldn't talk about it either.
Soda didn't stand a chance over there.
No, you got it.
I recently, like, not recently, but maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, finally got around to like remodeling her basement because like I would just take pool balls and just be like, see how many holes I can make in the drywall, and like painted it rainbow, and like
there was like
it looked like a venue down there.
yeah, we just
there was like a 16-year-old boy body shaped hole in a wall for like
I used to run and just slam into just see if I could literally bust through the wall. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know, and then like we fixed it all because
Also,
now I'm an adult.
I also lived in that basement for a year.
Yeah, he lived there for a year when we were.
Right before we moved.
Yeah, right before we moved. And then when we were cleaning up the basement, your mattress was still down there, and there was like a Hustler magazine under there. Yeah, pages all stuck together. And he rode my BMX bike
to work.
and he left it outside and it got stolen.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then I started
St. Louis
riding
for you.
a razor scooter to work.
Yeah.
He rode a razor scooter.
And
to work.
instead of making him buy me a new BMX bike, I made him get drunk with me because he was straight edge. So I was like, dude, you don't have to pay me back. You just have to drink a 6-pack of beer.
It's a good deal.
Yeah.
Worked out for me.
That's how he broke the
Win-win.
straight edge. That's funny.
So you guys are one of the few bands that like stayed in St. Louis. So there must be like a good scene in St. Louis, right? You were never like, screw this town.
There's a band called Story of the Year from there. That's,
And that's the
those guys
only-
are sick.
Well, we moved
There
here.
wasn't a big scene really.
Moved here, got signed because it's too expensive to live here when you're 22.
Or
So we-
45 or whatever.
or now. But
Yeah.
we just moved back home and put our stuff in our parents' house and went on tour. So like,
Yeah, and it's a great scene for us. I mean, like the local fans really support us because there hasn't been a lot of rock bands of our level to come out of St. Louis. So it's great for that to like be the big fish in our smaller pond. But yeah, not a lot of a crazy scene. I mean, there's a lot of great musicians and a lot of cool bands that start there, but usually they break up before they get anywhere, and it's weird.
What's wild though is
We got Nelly though.
the guy who started our current record label is an old friend from St. Louis who we played in bands with, and he went on to do A&R at Sumerian, during like the heyday of Asking Alexandria and all that kind of great stuff, and started Sharptone, and it all came back around.
That's how we ended up signing to Sharptone, our label that we're on now, and he was in a band called Calico System from St. Louis in the early 2000s. And
Nice full circle. Have any of you guys seen Paul McCartney at all?
no,
No.
I need to, but I haven't.
I remember he played on Hollywood Boulevard once when our office was over there. And a
that's
bunch of
cool.
people tried to, but it was, crazy.
yeah, getting there was impossible.
It's like you have to block off the entire city of Hollywood because
You have
Paul
to sleep in
McCartney's
your
there.
office for
Yes,
2-3
yeah.
days.
All right.
Goldfinger in 2002, Point Fest in our hometown, St. Louis.
Yeah, before that even I had seen Goldfinger I think twice at the Galaxy at that same club we were talking about seeing Deftones at. And then in the mid 90s, late 90s, Goldfinger was just so badass and they were such a great live band. So then we got a chance to play this local festival from the radio station festival in St. Louis called Point Fest, and they were on it. And that year we had VHS tapes of us just being idiots. Just some music, but mostly like Jackass style, just us being crazy kids.
Instead of a demo.
Yeah, that was like what we would give to people. And
Our demo was like us lighting each other on fire and doing like Jackass stuff. And then every once in a while, like there'd be a little bit of music.
But lots of live footage, though.
Yeah.
Wild live footage.
Yeah.
So we knew that John Feldman was producing bands because the used record maybe had just come out, or he did like Mest and a couple other bands. So we knew he was working with bands. So we were like, we got to get John Feldman a demo or the VHS tape. So that was like, we were so excited that they were playing the same show we were playing. And they ended up getting the VHS tape from our old guitar player, Greg. He actually snuck on their bus and just put it in their bus.
And anyone listening, don't do that.
Yeah, don't sneak on our bus and give us demos.
Someone's house.
Yeah.
Just send them on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
But it ended up working out, of course. John Feldman got that and loved our band and took us on tour and got us signed and all that. But this particular show was the first time that we all had played together. And
They headlined the side stage that day, right?
Yep.
I think so.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Which was always the cooler stage,
Yeah.
at that festival. Mm-hmm. And I feel like all the years that we've done Point Fest, we've done the side stage all but one time.
Side stage is way better.
We request it.
Yeah, because of those memories of seeing like Deftones on that same festival, Goldfinger, and just the idea of everyone from the amphitheater all coming to the side stage and filling it up. And that's what it was like for them. And watching Goldfinger every single night back in the day come out, and Feldman would jump the barricade into the crowd within 10 seconds of the song starting.
Yeah.
And that established like a bar for us that we had to meet as a live band, amongst all the other influences that, especially then when we got on tour with them and got to see how they operated as a live band and like learn about what the dynamics of a set should be like.
Yeah.
It was foundational for us.
And also just the serendipity of him actually watching. I mean, dude, like, you got to think that's before Instagram, before any of that stuff. So like back in the day when we were tour, like we would get dozens of CDRs, physical like copies of music, like bands, like we'd be in their city, local bands would throw them on stage. They'd give them like, so there was always just a pile of CDs in our bus and shit. And it's like, I don't mean to be a dick, but like we didn't listen to all of them,
Right.
But the fact that they walk in, there's a VHS tape that says Big Blue Monkey on it. And they're like, oh, we should watch this.
Yeah,
like,
we were still called Big Blue Monkey.
Who would watch that?
I think the story is Darren actually started watching it.
Yeah, but like
Well,
the fact that he was even like took
that's
times like
Maybe it's because it was a VHS tape and that wasn't normal. It wasn't
Exactly,
it wasn't a demo.
But either way, it's like probably wouldn't be sitting here, and the story of our
Definitely
band
not.
wouldn't have unfolded that way if they wouldn't have watched that.
Because
like
of that show, it changed our entire career,
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah. That's how we met Goldfinger. We went on tour and
Like everything else with our band, something unconventional is what led to things working. And a lot of those unconventional decisions that we made over the years have not worked in our favor, but a few select ones, I think, are the whole reason we're here.
Fortune favors the bold.
And I'm realizing now, as with the Deftones show, a lot of our cool things end up happening because we sneak into places.
You're not the first band to say that. It's okay. It's okay.
I guess that is the moral of the story.
We grew up in the Midwest and just kind of like, I'm not going to say like poor or lower class, but just definitely not like upper middle class, any of that shit. Like
Working class.
Working class, good.
Wasn't a lot of extra cash.
But we just always had that like cutthroat hustler work mentality. Like no one's going to give us anything. We just got to take it, earn it, take it, whatever, and we just always operated like that. So here we are.
We knew if we worked hard enough, we could make it happen. And it did. It worked.
Nice. Did you guys go to any shows at the pageant before you?
Oh,
there?
yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a venue for that long before the first time we played. The first time we played there was with Goldfinger.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Yeah.
I saw Green Day there a couple years
I was at that show.
Yeah, Green Day in the Living End.
Saw Deftones there.
Yeah.
We all saw Deftones there.
That was the show where I
and Incubus, was that?
Yeah.
committed another not totally legal act that got me backstage. Yeah.
I saw Perfect Circle there.
I think it opened in like 99-ish or something. Maybe late 90s, maybe 2000. So it was like the premier venue all of a sudden. And then once we started playing there, it was like, wow, this is like the best venue. It's a really nice venue. It's one of the best in the country. But yeah, so many great shows there.
You guys are going to be kind of busy, like doing stuff, but are there any shows you're going to as fans?
We're kind of busy.
My wife and I have tickets for 4 different nights for No Doubt at the Sphere.
Oh.
We spent a lot of money.
Oh, it sounds like you're excited about that.
We're trying to go. Trying to go for work, but
Just
say something about Deftones.
Just empty your savings.
We're going to go see Goldfinger.
that's why
Deftones.
anytime anybody's like, oh, have you seen Taylor Swift? I'm like, no, I can see Taylor Swift or I can go to 20 other shows. Like
Right.
that's the choice you have to make, you know? Like,
Yeah.
oh,
For the most part, we're spoiled now, and it's like, well, if I don't know somebody, I can't get in. I'm not paying for it. Because we've been on the road for so long. It's
I'm
like
not trying to stand in line.
Yeah, it's like it's a different environment for us now to go to shows. But I know Atreyu's coming to St. Louis in a couple weeks, and we were just talking about, we gotta go see our friends in Atreyu.
I don't see him during the day.
Yeah.
They play too late.
Josh
man.
goes in early and says hi. But yeah, if friends roll through St. Louis, we'll always try to go out and hang out.
Or if it's bands that were really influential and like bands like Smashing Pumpkins, Pantera, stuff like that. Like I've seen I went like I actually paid my own money, to go like these bands are like this shit's like going to church to me, man.
Sucker.
He doesn't know as many people as we know.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of No Doubt?
I got a Treasure Kingdom tattoo right there. Yep. One of my favorite bands. I really credit
It's kimono, dog.
Tony Kanal and just
kimono,
listening to and studying No Doubt as like the turning point where I stopped being a guitar player who agreed to play bass in a band to turning into an actual bass player. I just went through like just tab books and also learning by ear, learning as many no doubt songs as possible, and it really, really, really helped me. I don't know. I'm a pretty average bass player, but it helped me at least get to.
Don't give yourself too much credit.
No, thanks.
Inspirational.
Yeah.
Too much credit.
No, that comes down to that early story of us just figuring out who was going to be in our band and how we could all make it work. And it was like, dude, you play guitar, you could play bass, right?
Yeah.
This
Didn't own a
dude-
bass, didn't own an amp.
Yeah, this dude, the first practices we had, he didn't even have an amp or a bass. He just jumped
He
around.
would just literally jump with his bass on, and he's like, "Yeah, I got this."
Or he had a bass, no amp. Like it wasn't even plugged in. Just
It's probably Chris's bass.
No,
Probably.
I had that Ibanez that you guys
you
bought
had
for
the
me.
Ergodyne.
I was at work, and they went and bought me a bass at this big sale at this local music store.
Yeah.
Like, join our band.
Yeah. It was just like whatever.
More
makes it
about
work.
the No Doubt show. You're going
Yes.
to 4 in a row.
Sorry, I stole that.
Not in a row because
Okay.
they're spread across
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah.
So we got like the hotel package thing that has, I think we got 2 shows around that, and that's we got tickets all around the different spots in the Sphere because I'm super interested in like the technology
okay.
experience. She wants floor seats or floor tickets for some nights, so we got a lot.
Wow, you're gonna have to come back and talk about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Are you gonna kiss her?
Maybe, dude. Maybe I'll get to first base.
Sweet.
I was wondering, is there gonna be a tour for Arson?
Nah, we're over it.
We've already moved on.
We've been to enough shows.
Going to the next. On to the next.
Yeah,
We
doing
only go to Goldfinger and Deftones shows.
only if they take us on tour. No, we have a bunch of festivals already announced and stuff. But yes, there's multiple legs of headlining tour that we're getting ready to announce in a few weeks. So we got a lot of plans. It's going to be very, very full end of the year. Yeah.
Cool. How are you gonna put together the set list?
It's too much work.
That's-
Too much pressure. It's gonna be hard.
Yeah. We'll play a bunch of, but as many as we can off the new record, and then a little bit of everything. You know,
We'll take a set that's already built
yeah.
and
Swap out some songs.
swap out some
We had a
songs.
we had a really
kinda what we do.
great release show in St. Louis, like we were saying, and that set list was really cool. I'm sure we'll stick with that semi vibe. It's cool because we played like 17 songs or something, or 18 songs, and more than half the set list was songs that we've put out in the last 4 years or whatever on our last 2 records, and that's very new for us.
That's the coolest shit ever for a
Yeah.
band that's been around for 25 years.
Usually it's like we have to play all Page Avenue songs, but now it's like our fans are really embracing the last couple records, so it's like it's really cool to be able to go new song heavy in the set. You know, it's like that's awesome. That's a cool feeling.
How do you like all your songs still work so well together? Like they don't feel like dated or anything. Like how do you keep your identity as a band but still feel current? Like
I think Dan has such a specific way he sings and the way he screams and just like what he does. It's so distinct and so him that it kind of gives us artistic license to do kind of whatever we want within boundaries. So we can kind of go here, go there, go soft, go heavy, whatever. And even stuff, if you hear just the music, you're like, I don't know, that might be too much. As soon as he sings over it, it's just like, oh, that's Story of the Year. So
But then also the past 2 albums working with Colin Britton, the producer, who fully produced and co-produced this new one. He being a little bit younger and having seen Story of the Year as a fan, as like a kid in high school, has a perspective on our band that we can't possibly have internally. So being able to like zoom out and identify what makes us who we are and help us focus on that and update it is so essential and crucial. And like, any older artists that I would ever talk to that's wondering like how to kind of rekindle older stuff and make it work now, I would say get a younger producer.
and stop thinking about it so hard.
Yeah, that.
just do it.
Yeah,
Just
we
do it.
We just write what we like, and it ends up sounding like us. And luckily, we get cool producers to help us make that sound current and new. But it's just the same thing we always have done.
Well, thank you for sharing all your memories with me today.
Thanks for having
Thanks for having us.